Hey folks, Dan here, back with an indie comic review. This review is one I've been meaning to do for some time, and it pleases me to finally be able to do it. Today I'm going to talk about Kamen America by Mark Pellegrini and Timothy Lim. This creative team has seriously shifted into a whole new gear over the last couple of years. They consistently turn out regular work in a professional and timely manner. Their speed and efficiency is certainly enough to admire on its own, but it's the consistent quality of their work on top of that which has seriously raised the bar for other indie creators. When I say quality, I don't simply mean the art, though Tim's work is almost criminally appealing, or Pellegrini's writing, though that is clever, punny, and contains actual structure. What I mean by quality here is the quality of the messaging and its tone. That applies to other works by this team, but I'm focusing on Kamen America Volume 1 in this review. So without wasting any more time, let's begin. Right off the bat, the title itself is clever, effective, and gets the job done while making it look easy. The title serves both as a reference and a pun, both of which drive home precisely what we can expect once we open the book. Kamen is a reference to a certain genre of Japanese entertainment, a reference that fans will immediately recognize and make all the associations to. Combine that with America and you get a cute pun, but we're also signaled that the story will either be a loving tribute to the values of America and the West, or a sardonic satire. Fortunately for my tastes and for my patience, it's the former. So immediately what we have here is a team who can turn a phrase and mold it into a solid piece of iconography. Notice how the A joins the M and includes a representation of the main character's mask. Put simply, this is a pro logo. One last thing about the title. Since it is a pun, and a fun one at that, this told me that this book should have a lighthearted, enjoyable tone, which, spoiler alert, it does. So, after a quote from Doug TenNapel that's difficult to disagree with, the story begins. If you haven't yet figured out that this character is a reimagining of Captain Marvel by looking at the cover, it won't take you long once you get into the story. Here's a hint. The main character's name is Carly Vanders. A quick aside here before I go on, because it is in fact relevant to the book. Now, I can't speak for everyone, but it's been a common thing to see for most of my life to have media encourage girls to do all the things boys do. In the last 10 years alone, I couldn't spit without hitting 15 ads, shows, comics, or movies that not only tell girls that they can be scientists or engineers, but to not so subtly assert that they should be. It's almost become a mandate at this point. As a father of a daughter, I tend to think, well, what if she wants to be a busker or a ballet dancer, or what if she wants to be a garbage collector? In other words, how about we just let kids do what they want, instead of trying to make ourselves feel better by shoving coding exercises at them? I get that in the past, young girls were encouraged to be homemakers, but this isn't the mid-20th century anymore, and the reverse of this mentality isn't any healthier. These days, the only thing stopping a young woman from becoming a scientist or engineer is herself. It's time to just get out of the way and let kids find their own path. Back to the review. Kamen America tackles all that stuff I just said head on in what is clearly a reference to the Captain Marvel movie. Our main character is playing baseball. Our main character is obviously out of her depth and doesn't want to be there. She takes a pitch to the melon and has to put a stake on it, which is a hilarious visual, and I wish there were more artists who did this. We learned then that Carly felt pressured into these sorts of activities by her teacher, Miss Wormwood. Carly loves to make dresses, and her teacher has told her that she is setting a bad example to the other girls by enjoying things, like making dresses, playing with dolls, or baking brownies. A modern reader may find this to be comical caricature, but I can tell you from having grown up around feminists in the 70s and 80s, I've been hearing talk like this for as long as I can remember, since the first grade. Carly's father then precisely echoes my thoughts on the matter. If a girl likes to play baseball or chop wood, she should play baseball or chop wood. If she wants to make dresses, she should make dresses. If it were my daughter, she'd be encouraged to be the best wood chopper or dressmaker on the planet, and given her brains, she'd easily accomplish either goal. It's not about my pride or vanity at appearing progressive, it's about my child's happiness. This is a heartwarming moment, and it contains multiple bits of foreshadowing that pay off both in the moment and later on. This is what's known as solid writing. So we fast forward 11 years, and Carly is all grown up. She's been hired by the USO to perform for the troops overseas. More than anything, she wants everyone to enjoy the outfits she's designed, but when she pointedly asks what the audience thought about them, she gets crickets. I'll be honest here, it's hard not to want to shout, "I love your outfits, Carly!" at the panel because she's just so earnest about them. So Carly sulks about her outfit's non-reception to her driver, who is absolutely not a cameo, and then we get our inciting event. A meteor shower smashes the immediate area and apparently blows up our protagonist.
Looks like this is the end.
But of course it isn't. One coma later, which is a precise unit of time by the way, she wakes up in Area 51, and we go into a hilarious send-up that manages to be clever without being Whedon-esque. We learn that she absorbed a heavy amount of radiation during the meteor shower, and that this has significantly altered her body's chemistry. If this isn't a loving tribute to the magic radiation that we saw so often in early Marvel books, I personally see it that way and I'm going with it. So the military offers her a job, which she refuses because remember, she just wants to make clothes. So Carly's friend Vicky picks her up, and here we have the first payoff from the prologue. Carly mentioned her friend Vicky, who managed to avoid being pestered by their teacher, Miss Wormwood. Here we find out why that was. Carly tells Vicky that she loves designing clothes, but she wants more. She makes a good enough living, and even had the plush offer from the military, but she still feels unfulfilled. She remarks then that Vicky never seemed to have this problem, and that's why Miss Wormwood left her alone. Vicky then explains that Miss Wormwood didn't leave her alone because Vicky was sure of what she wanted. It was because what Vicky wanted was acceptable to the teacher. That is, Vicky wanted to be a geologist, which qualified as being part of the science. Thus what the teacher thought girls ought to do, so Vicky was left alone. Vicky then goes on to cite the statistical reality that women outnumber men in higher education, much to her chagrin, and that it was hardly glass ceiling in the field, most of her co-workers being women. So after the road trip back from Area 51, Carly goes back to her headquarters for her fashion line, Visions by Vanders, which was her studio since childhood, or at least it's built to perfectly resemble it. In conversation, she mentions that all throughout her trip back, storm clouds appeared to have been following her over 6 states. And then she is promptly struck by the lightning bolt. Now Carly has superpowers, and she's also blonde. So the first thing she thinks to do as a savvy businesswoman is to rebrand herself. So she goes to her agent, who has been representing her since she first started making mittens, and her agent brands the brand new superhero Warhen. Now this whole sequence, launching Warhen's career, isn't subtle and it isn't supposed to be. Look. It's demonstrating absurdity by being absurd. I wish I could say that this here isn't practically a direct quote from actual headlines when the Captain Marvel film was released a mere 2 years after Wonder Woman. It's always year zero. Anyway, back to the story. The monster Carly is battling turns to mud after she kills it. This will come into play later. So after that, we get a montage of Warhen being a successful superhero, downing monster after monster with branded attacks, and she becomes famous. Jump ahead 6 months, and Carly commits a PR faux pas by giving her sash to a homeless lady. Her sleazy agent says that this will hurt the Warhen brand. And Carly snaps back that she bought the material and made the sash so she can do whatever she damn well pleases with it. This is the first hint that Carly is not long for this relationship with her agent, given their clash of values. So after thinking on it, Carly returns to the agent's office, and she's all set to state her case clearly about wanting to do her own thing as a superhero. At first, her agent appears to agree, and Carly is thrilled until her agent goes on to say that Carly can go ahead and do her cornball shtick all she wants because they've got a new woke sidekick that will move the agenda along. In return for this favor, he informs Carly that she'll need to wear logos on her costume. There's a none too subtle reference here that certain people will get, as well as a nod to the McDonald's brand from many different anime. So Carly is fed up, she's had enough, and quits. But her agent reminds her that she does not own the name Warhen, that is in fact the intellectual property of the agency. Carly says that's fine because she hated that name anyway and always wanted to be called Kamen America. Thus, her origin story is complete.
Looks like this is the end.
Or is it? Yes, there's more. Carly and Vicky's friend Siggy learns that his father, a missionary in a foreign country, was captured by Russian mercenaries who had broken a ceasefire in the region and invaded the demilitarized zone. News footage captures what is clearly another super being on the scene. That's enough for Carly. She resolves to rescue Siggy's father and everyone else after explaining why she came to call herself Kamen America. This sequence, in which Carly delivers her declaration of motivation, is written and presented with wholesome sincerity, and were this written by a student of the Whedon School, it would be followed up by an awkward pause and laughter. Thankfully it wasn't, and it isn't, and the newly christened Kamen America flies overseas and arrives on the scene. She's immediately upon landing forced to take cover so that we can take a moment to meet our villain, Meteor Misha Lavakova, a Russian counterpart to Kamen America. Now, whereas Carly's powers are electricity-based and turn her into a blonde, Misha's are fire-based and turn her into a redhead. We also get an idea right away that Misha has had a similar journey to Carly. Her attacks, like Carly's, are branded, but in Misha's case they're all Soviet or Russian branded, right down to the Tunguska blast of 1909, or was it 1908? I'm sorry, Ray. Is Misha also a product of someone else's marketing ideas? She drops a hint during a lull in the action to that effect. On top of that, after Misha gains the upper hand, we learn that Misha herself is also a seamstress, but that she thinks soldiers aren't supposed to like sewing. Misha's struggle is essentially Carly's. Misha was bigger than the other girls and was pushed into sports by her school. Her family then pushed her into their private military company as a mercenary. Then, after Misha gained her powers by way of the same meteor shower which empowered Carly, Misha was pressured to use her powers like this. Misha loves her country and her compatriots, but she doesn't want to hurt people, she wants to help them. Here's where the other little bit of setup from the prologue is paid off. Carly tells Misha to focus on what she is, not what others expect her to be. Misha ultimately agrees and stands down at great personal risk, but with her sense of self and integrity restored. So we wrap up this first volume with another thinly veiled reference here during the media fallout. It's a sentiment I wholeheartedly endorse. I'd rather dig ditches until my back breaks than take the ticket. At least I could look myself in the mirror each morning. So Vicky has a look at the above-mentioned monster mud, and we get a quick glimpse of what's to come in the next volume. Can we expect a new superpowered friend or foe? Find out in Volume 2. The art throughout Kamen America Volume 1 is consistently beautiful, appealing, and lovingly rendered. Tim is the man. The story is brisk and tightly plotted with snappy dialogue that doesn't feel like it's trying to pry a laugh out of you or an "I understood that" reference out of you. The overall theme of Volume 1 is one that we've been hearing for decades. Don't be what people think you should be, but be who you really are. What sets this book apart, though, is that we don't often see this message presented in this way. And presenting the message in this way seems to be sadly controversial to a lot of people. The message is typically invoked to encourage people to break traditional expectations. But over time, when society shifts and the traditional becomes the non-traditional, does this still apply? For example, if a young girl today just wants to sew, do we shove code in her face or boxing gloves on her hands to make ourselves feel better about ourselves for busting the patriarchy? Or do we just let her do what makes her happy? The answer is, of course, the latter. Let people be themselves. All I can add to all this from here is that the book is a pure delight. It is an exceptional book by an exceptional team, and I cannot wait to dig into Volume 2. Thanks for listening to this review. Needless to say, I highly recommend Kamen America Volume 1. This is an IP that I hope stays around for a while, and it certainly has the quality to acquire that longevity. I'll be back later with more reviews. Until then, stay safe and stay sane.